two big moves over the weekend. So Trevor Story to the Red Sox, Carlos Correa to Minnesota. So, which team needed a signing more, and which guy has improved his fantasy potential? Twins win total sits at 80.5. Red Sox 85.5.
I think in terms of which team needs the signing more, you could make the case it was the Red Sox just because of how strong the top of that division is. But I think it's probably the Twins. If you looked at their offseason up to this point, they were super busy, but the general consensus was, man, this doesn't quite make sense unless there's some follow-up. And, man, they got the best possible follow-up you could ask for. I think most people would have had Carlos Correa as the top free agent entering the season, certainly in terms of projected WAR. That was him in many places. So you got a team that they did trade away a star in Josh Donaldson, and doing that while also adding a good pitcher in Sonny Gray, and now Correa to sort of replace that offense that they lost in Donaldson. I think it's definitely a pretty strong net positive overall for the Twins. In terms of individual fantasy value, I like Story's move more just because Minnesota is not a great park for Correa to be going to, and while the team is improving because of Correa himself, it's not an amazing lineup. Story, on the other hand, it's obviously a big downgrade if you're looking at him compared to Coors Field, where he was last year. But if you looked at him compared to any given park where he could have signed this winter, Boston's one of the best ones out there. In terms of StatCast park factors for weighted on base average, which is sort of the best overall offense stat, Fenway actually ranks second behind Coors Field. So it's as small of a drop as Story could have gotten there, and he gets to join a deep lineup. So I think he should be quite happy with where he lands from a fantasy perspective.
Oh, and I'm being told Nick Friar has joined us. Nick is here. He's ready to talk about the two big moves over the weekend. Trevor Story to the Sox, Carlos Correa to Minnesota. So, Nick, what's your take on this?
Yeah, I don't understand what the Twins exactly are trying to do here. I mean, I understand adding talent and everything, but when you're looking at where they were last year, I get you want to improve, but still, is this the best use of your money? And of course, it's a very player-friendly contract for Correa, so it's a great move on his end. Again, if you don't want to win, though. But when you look at so I think the Red Sox move is the better move here, just in terms of trying to improve, your chances at winning a title this season. And for the Red Sox too, I know that Erik kind of hit on it a little bit with Story and how it's, of course, anywhere he goes to is going to be a downgrade from Coors Field. But still, I look at Fenway Park and I look at that Green Monster and I see what it's done for a lot of guys over the course of their career when guys have kind of been going in the wrong direction. So I think Story is still going to do pretty well. When you look at his ISO too, I know Erik already hit on his WOBA, but when you look at his ISO, I know it was like 300 over his career at Coors Field. It's still at a cool 201 away from Coors Field. So you go and put him at still a hitter-friendly ballpark, a hitter-friendly division. And I like this move by the Red Sox quite a bit.
All right, over to the NL West. Let's start with a little DFS. Who's going to be the DFS stud next season in this division? Tatis could be out for a bit. The Dodgers adding Freeman could be a huge boost for Turner and Betts. So, Erik, who's the guy we're going to see in your DFS lineups more often than not from the NL West?
Certainly all those Dodgers benefit from the presence of each other, but they're also all going to be extremely expensive. I think they'll be in my lineups plenty when I have room for the top bats. But I think my secret go-to tech here in the NL West is always the Giants platoon guys. They're generally not very pricey, especially the guys who only come in against lefties. You'll see guys like Darren Ruff coming in as one of the cheaper first basemen, but when he's in the lineup, he produces on a very strong level. I also think Alex Cobb, the new signing for that Giants rotation, we saw what the Giants were able to do with basically every pitcher they signed. I think Cobb actually was better than his ERA last year, had some very nice peripherals. I think early in the season, if he's cheap, if people haven't caught on to the fact that he's actually quite good and the Giants are likely to make him better, I think early season I might be including Alex Cobb for almost all of his starts.
Nick, who are you going to be rostering on the regular?
Yeah, I mean, I know Freddie Freeman's a guy who's going to be pretty popular early, but another guy we talk about questionable moves, Chris Bryant, of course, at Coors Field. I think this is a guy who's going to, putting anybody at Coors Field is going to help their home run numbers. But when you look at Chris Bryant and what he does with his swing, I know he's made some changes over the course of his career where he was, more deliberately trying to hit fly balls every single at bat. Now he can kind of go back to that a little bit at Coors Field, and that air is going to help take care of him. So I think this guy, of course, he's a stud play. I think Erik talked about the Giants quite a bit, and he makes a lot of sense what he's talking about there. But I think when you're looking at a stud guy to move away from the Dodgers, I think Chris Bryant is going to be my number one.
Okay, well, that's a great segue because Chris Bryant's home run total is sitting at 30.5 on the DK Sportsbook. So now that he's in Colorado, that could be a nice over to look at because, Coors Field, you just mentioned it, Nick. So is that a player future from the NL West that might be jumping out to you?
Yeah, that's actually my favorite one from the division. I was looking at this the second. I would think anybody who's interested in sports betting in baseball was thinking the second that Chris Bryant signed with Coors Field, or even when the rumors started popping up, that's going to be a product you're going to have to look at for this season at 30.5. I love it because he's gone over that a few times in his career and he's come up short on that a few times. But again, he's now at Coors Field, and everybody gets a big boost when they go there. And this guy in particular, I like a lot just because of his swing path. I know we talk more about the numbers here, but throughout the course of his career, he's been more of a fly ball guy. That's what he's deliberately tried to do. You put a guy like that in Coors Field, he's going to hit a lot of home runs. So even though he's come up short a few years, I think just being at Coors Field is going to help him easily get to 31 home runs this season.
All right, Erik, player futures from the NL West that sort of jump out to you here.
I want to touch on Bryant real quick. Surprisingly, most of the projections have him in the mid-20s for homers, with the highest being a 29 among those projections available over at Fangraphs. I think the reason there is people often erroneously think that Coors Field is this home run paradise. It is very homer-friendly, but it's only fourth per StatCast. What actually happens is they move the fences so far back so that the homers don't completely take over the game, and then you get super high batting averages because all the singles and doubles fall in. So the projections don't love that Bryant one, even though definitely the logic makes some sense to me. As far as some of my favorite NL West bets here, some maybe sad ones. I think Manny Machado under 104.5. That's 104.5 RBI, sorry. That's a number that's above all the projections there, I believe. And he's not going to have Fernando Tatis Jr. hitting in front of him for the early part of the season. He obviously is talented enough to get to that number. He's gotten to it in the past. But generally only about 10 guys get there. And I think if he's lost a bat as strong as Fernando Tatis in front of him, I think the under is the way to go.
All right, Dodgers have the highest win total in the majors at 96.5. Padres next in the West at 88.5. Giants way down at 85.5 from their 107 win total from just last year. Now, Rockies and Diamondbacks expected to finish at the bottom of the division, 69.5 and 66.5 wins each. So, Erik, which team's win total are you looking to bet on right now? That is a mouthful.
Yeah, we got several of the strongest teams in the league in this division, so I'm going to give the people what they want and talk about the Rockies and Diamondbacks here. I think, according to both Fangraphs projected standings and baseball prospectuses, those two are flipped. Both of those sites view the Rockies as among the worst teams in the league. They're the second worst on Fangraphs, fourth worst on Baseball Prospectus. Even after the Chris Bryant signing, there's just not a lot there. Those sites are projecting 66, 67 wins for the Rockies. So that 69.5 seems a bit high. Whereas the Diamondbacks, they were awful last year at just 52 wins. But I think you could make the case that they were just a normal bad team that really underachieved. And that baseline talent of not a good team again, but a normal bad team should be able to get more than 66.5. I believe Fangraphs has them for 69. And Baseball Prospectus has them all the way up at 73.
All right, Nick, let's see if I can say this. Which team's win total are you looking to bet on now?
Yeah, so I mean, Erik kind of already hit on the bottom tier teams in this division, but I do want to touch on the Diamondbacks. I actually think the under for them is the way to go this year. Of course, they went under that this past year. I mean, you're right that this is a normal bad team maybe, but still, this is one of the best divisions in baseball, if not the best division, and I still think very highly of the Giants. I don't think that as much as their win total is at 85.5, that is not my number one when we're looking at the highest win. Going over on win totals, I still think the Dodgers is the best one to take of those top three teams. But still, I think you look at those three teams that you have in the same division. I can't see the Diamondbacks, and honestly, I'd be surprised if the Rockies hit the over on this one too. But I think the Diamondbacks going under and the Dodgers going over their respective win totals is the way to go.
All right, Dodgers, speaking of, heavy favorites at minus 205 for the division. So are you looking at a more enticing number from one of the other teams, maybe? We did think the Dodgers would run away last year, and the Giants had an incredible regular season. So who's the division bet in the West, Nick?
So looking at that number to minus 205, I don't want to go and necessarily back the Dodgers, and I generally just don't want to go and back the Dodgers anyways. The Padres are not a team that I want to back in this situation. The Giants would be the only one that I would be comfortable doing it with, on top of it being plus 550 right now on DraftKings Sportsbook. I just think that the Giants are perpetually underrated. I understand what the Dodgers are doing. I understand the lineup that they have. I still feel more comfortable at them hitting the over on their win total than the Giants. But if we're talking about value and talking about this team, surprise team, all those things, I think the Giants are the way to go for betting on the division.
Erik, Dodgers, they're now minus 220 favorites.
Yes, that's maybe a little bit more in line. At minus 205, I believe that's a 67% chance. Fangraphs has them at 70%. Baseball Prospectus has them all the way up at 85% to win the division. So according to those, even with those odds, the Dodgers are the right bet. We got to touch on the Giants, though, a little bit more. They have the type of roster that projections historically underrate, and that's one where the talent level is flatter from top to bottom. You see the team like the Rays does that too. And the reason projections underrate that kind of team is because individual absences and underperformances hurt less because the replacements aren't all that much worse than the guys you're losing. Whereas a team like the Dodgers, if they were to, say, lose a Betts or a Freeman early in the season, they're losing 6 wins worth of player. So even though the projections really don't like the Giants at all, we have to remember how much last year was considered an overachievement and not necessarily the actual level that we should expect them to play at every year. Even though the projections really don't like them, we're talking a 0.4% chance of winning the division, according to Baseball Prospectus. I think it's better than that. I think that Nick's play there is fine, even though the projections are going to hate it.